GM Growth Fam, time for another episode. I have with me Shahab, who has spent 20 years in marketing, which is only five less than how old I am. So, Shahab, no shade to you, but I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for making me feel much older than I felt today. But thanks for having me on. It's an honor. It's a privilege. I'm excited for this.
Awesome. And just for the context of the audience, today's conversation is going to not just be marketing, but there's a lot of different topics that we're going to cover that I feel like are probably more important than the marketing stuff that we're going to talk about. But I have to talk about that first of all. Shahab, what's been like the one story in your 2 decades that you spent in marketing that has stuck with you over the time period? It could be related to work, it could be a personal experience, could be anything, but I'm really interested in knowing what that story is.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've experienced a lot in my 20 years, my 2 decades of marketing work. Early on, I had the privilege of working for GoPro, and this was the early days of social media and the early days of GoPro, where we only had athletes and we're only catering to the extreme athletes at the time. And we had our quarterly goals, and it was to like open up our segments to different segments and different audiences. Part of our work was to go through Instagram and go through and this was when hashtags were still a thing. We're going through the different hashtags to see what people were posting. And it was the early advent of UGC, and GoPro did it the best in my at that time. But as we're going down through the content, we found this piece that was essentially a GoPro tied to a toddler, and the toddler was running around throughout his day and just recording everything. We thought it was brilliant, and we went ahead and shared that, and that went viral. It probably did much better than all our other videos at the time. And the days that followed, there was an uptick in the different audience segments that we wanted to attract, and it did so well for us. And the message I really hold on to from that moment is, we might be so rigid to follow these objectives and these goals that we set for ourselves, or the company sets for us, that we're sometimes blind to see what the universe puts in your way or what opportunities are presenting itself. So what I always like to remind myself is be open to the signs or the opportunities or the paths that are presented to you. Explore those options and don't be rigid in your way.
And I think both, so GoPro that you work with, but you've also worked with Liquid Death, which is one of the brands that, especially from a marketing perspective, I am absolutely obsessed with, just based on what they've been able to do. Both, although GoPro and Liquid Death are sort of like, they define the category that probably existed in some way, shape, or form before, but they were able to have such a huge impact on that probably from a perceptional standpoint, you would not be able to see. What do you feel like one helped both Liquid Death and GoPro in becoming that category defining brand? And both of them in extremely crowded spaces. And the second thing is, how did that, let's say, key leverage point allow them, both of them, to scale really, really quickly?
Yeah, solid question. I think what both companies did really well was being free with their content. Liquid Death, especially, put out content that people wanted to see. It wasn't the standard old water company water ad where it shows like a mountain and fresh spring water. And no, it gave you entertaining content. It gave you edgy content. And this allowed people to share, allowed people to laugh, allowed people to remember the brand. And that goes a long way. GoPro did the same thing by putting out cool content out there. And I think they were the first ones to do such things. Liquid Death was one of the first big companies who walked that edgy line. And this was like a huge shocker to some people that got replicated and copied afterwards, of course. What you can take from it is, I guess, don't be afraid to try new things and give people the content that they want to see and not necessarily just try to sell them stuff.
Do you think that there was a template that both of them followed, maybe a system that allowed them to be extremely successful in the content that they produced?
No, I know for a fact there wasn't a template. They were pioneers of this. I sat in those rooms where they were talking about the most outrageous ideas and brainstorming. But at the same time, it was backed by data that they saw. It was backed by their potential ROI. And both companies, especially Liquid Death, wanted to stay very lean. A lot of the content they shot was shot in their headquarters in Los Angeles, with the regular iPhone camera, using their own staff as actors. But because, again, it was funny, it was entertaining, it was outrageous and edgy, it did much better than something you get from an ad agency.
Do you also think like what impact, especially from a user generated content perspective, Both GoPro, obviously, just because of the product itself, you're shooting video, so on and so forth. You mentioned that toddler example, but also with Liquid Death, the campaigns that they produced, just because of the cultural awareness that it had, and understanding the fact that we need to be edgy, we need to be unique, but we don't need to be cringe. Do you feel like what role do you feel that cultural awareness for both brands played into utilizing the insights they were getting from their users and then producing content that would resonate well with the audience that they were targeting?
Yeah, I'll answer this in two parts. A is, put out content, but put out content according to your overall goal, your overall strategy, your overall intention. Be very intentional with it. For example, Liquid Death put out a campaign with Martha Stewart, and it was just Martha Stewart in her kitchen chopping off an arm, and it became a candle. And at the time, people were asking, why are we doing something with Martha Stewart? It doesn't fit our audience. But there was a reason for that. We saw opportunities in segments of females that we weren't doing well with before, of 35 and 45 and above that we weren't doing well with before. So we went ahead and partnered with someone like Martha Stewart that with the campaign looking like something we do, like it stuck to our brand guidelines, and then it resulted in 25%, 30% upticks in those segment categories, in those audiences. But you also have to stick to your North Star. For Liquid Death, it was always going up against the big guy. It was always fighting the corporate hypocrisy, or even the wellness culture. We were water in a can, which was great for the environment and great for your body. So we automatically had that license to be edgy. We had that license to walk that fine line. And because of that, our content stayed authentic to who we were. A lot of times, people will walk their own fine line, and then they'll do one edgy thing, and they'll come back and they'll do that one edgy thing for the sake of getting virality. And sure, virality might seem cool for a day if you have, if you steal mind share for a day or for a week, but virality by itself is cheap. And if you are not following your brand guidelines, and you stray and you come back, it loses that authenticity and it loses that branding. Liquid Death stuck to their branding, and didn't chase virality, and virality came to them. And those are just some disciplines to keep.
One really interesting thing, especially with Liquid Death, was their campaign of Death to Plastic.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you were there at that point in time or not, but that's a campaign that I feel was both obviously environmentally aware of the fact that, of course, their brand canned water is better than plastic bottled water, so on and so forth, going up against the big guys. Sort of a accumulation of values within what they were trying to portray as a brand. Do you feel like, especially with brands that are trying to be more environmentally aware, eco-friendly, so on and so forth, that narrative is really, really strong. Both, I mean, from a tech perspective, at a time it was all the rage in crypto. I don't know how much it is at the moment. But how do you feel like these sort of varying messages of being edgy and almost delivering viral content fits in with the social conscious awareness? And then how do those values blend together to produce a marketing campaign that's going to hit both fronts?
Yeah, again, I mentioned this before. We automatically had a license to walk that fine line, to be edgy, and it came naturally. Liquid Death came into the public eye during the time where there was a lot of studies being dropped about the harmfulness of microplastics, not just for the environment, but also for the human body. And there was tons of interviews and podcasts with scientists and doctors going on podcasts and saying how these microplastics are leaving long lasting effects in the human body. So we came right at a good time. And because of that, we were able to again be edgy, murder your thirst, death to plastic. We can do severed heads, we did an NFT collection with severed heads and water connected to it. And we were allowed to do this because again, we were healthy for you. We were healthy for the environment, and our messaging was okay according to that. But I don't think that necessarily would work for other brands. So you really have to see what you can get away with, I guess.
What's the story with Severed Heads? Like, I feel like a lot of Web2 brands, especially earlier on, 2021, 2022, attempting to do NFT collections. Several fashion brands tried it. I know several brands tried to build like a program around having NFTs as a part of their tech stack. Why do you think it worked for Liquid Death outside of, let's say, the branding perspective of it being severed heads? But from a Web2 brand perspective, why do you think that NFT collection worked for you but didn't work for other people?
Yeah, again, it went along with our branding. It had lore, it had a story. The Liquid Death mascot is a guy with a can on his head with two axes who goes around and destroys plastic, and it goes along with murder your thirst, and he severs heads that are drinking plastic bottles. And the art was done by a very well known artist called Will Carsola, who's also been the artist behind Mr. Pickles on Cartoon Network. So we had a lot of fun with it. It was something I had the privilege of being a part of. And it's just a collection of severed heads, the NFT collection. It fit our narrative, it fit our story, and the NFT collection itself did really well as well. It fit the whole metal cultist punk rock demographic of Web3 as well. We had great partnerships with like Wicked Craniums, the Dead Fellas, which went hand in hand. We actually did a collab with the Dead Fellas, which was a severed Dead Fellas head and a severed Alien Friends head, and we did some cool stuff there as well. It did well for us because it fit into our lore, it fit into our story.
Going back a minute to your work with GoPro, like GoPro started as a brand for fitness people, surfers, actually. I think that was the story that the founder of GoPro built a
Exactly.
prototype with a surfboat leash and a cheap camera and went door to door selling that. And now then eventually it evolved into essentially every single influencer using that as a vlogging camera. So there was a complete shift within the community that it was addressing before to ultimately going to a completely new audience. Do you feel like there is a process, a system, a way to implement a complete shift within your target audience as your brand matures?
Yeah, I think you have to see who's really resonating with your brand. With the advent of social media and all the metrics that come with it, you get to see the different segments that do well with your content, and then you just really cater to those people. We made an effort to be open to anybody using the GoPro. I mentioned the toddler story. There's many other stories like that as well that we encouraged and we shared. And Liquid Death did the same thing. We were always open to the possibility of other people liking our brand and enjoying it.
So would you say that that just organically evolved into people figuring out different uses of the products that they were, um, yeah, the products that you worked on, essentially?
Organically, yes, but I think you also have to develop the tools and put out the ideas and even create a safe space for them to come in and feel like they belong. And that goes hand in hand with, the community building side of things, giving people that sense of belonging. When you think about Liquid Death at first, you probably think about like heavy metal, hard rock,
Yeah, it
death,
almost sounds
twisted.
like a metal.
Correct. We did a giveaway with like four or five different projects in Web3 for Liquid Death, and someone who's never even heard about Liquid Death won a Liquid Death shirt. Or no, sorry, I apologize. They won a Liquid Death NFT, and it got airdropped to them, and then they made their way. This is a female lady, a female. She made her way to the Discord, started asking questions. What is Liquid Death? Is it a band? Is it music? I kid you not. 2 to 3 weeks later, this lady, the same lady, was in our Discord wearing our merch, crushing cans, and feeling one with the community. So I think you just have to give people that safe space, give them the tools, and empower them with it.
That sounds amazing. Were you able to replicate some of those really foundational learnings within some of the Web3 brands you worked with? You worked with Bitcoin OS. I know there are several other companies that you worked with. Is there a good example of, okay, let's say I had XYZ learning in GoPro or Liquid Death, and I almost like directly ported over that learning into a Web3 project I work with that was able to achieve a level of success with that as well?
Yeah, I think when it comes to community management and community growth, I think Web3 does a better job than Web2. I think we focus strongly on community, where Web2 companies might think about community later after their product's done, and it's a different feeling. And I think you can learn from both sides. But what I can take from GoPro and Liquid Death over to the Web3 projects that I work with is at GoPro and at Liquid Death, we made sure that we were not the story wasn't about us. We were not the hero. Our product was not the hero. The hero of the story is our consumer, is our audience. GoPro cameras or Liquid Death Water is just a guide to help people feel to get there, to get be part of that hero journey. And we just created the environment, we created the storyline, and then we handed people the cans and they felt great and they felt like kings and they felt like rock stars. Or we've handed people the cameras and they felt like athletes, even though they weren't. They felt like you said, a surfer, a biker, whatever they wanted to feel like. We gave people the tools to make them feel like the hero. And I think, unfortunately, Web3 brands do not do this. Web3 brands focus on themselves. They make themselves the hero and they forget about the audience member. And I think we have to start changing it up a little bit. We have to make our audience, our community members feel like the hero. If they're holding the NFT, it's the NFT is not the hero. The holder of the NFT is the hero, and the NFT is just an access card for them to get there or a guide for them to get there. And that's what I try to implement. And it's growing. It's getting better.
I think the biggest sort of insight learning, if you don't listen to the whole podcast, I think this is the 1 or 2 minutes that you should be paying the most attention to, because I feel like it is so damn true that a lot of Web3 projects forget the fact that, and it's not like they're forgetting it. I feel like they know that users are important, their insights are important, so on and so forth. But almost, especially from a marketing perspective, so many of them forget the fact that the persona that you've built for an ideal person who's ultimately going to use your product, whether that's a dev, whether that's just a user of your product, whether that's a stakeholder that's going to engage with your product, that they need to be front and center within your marketing. And it's not just going to be, hey, I found this cool product, I'm going to tweet about it, and then the company is going to retweet it. But that whole sort of central core focus of turning the user into the hero is, yeah, I feel like it's missing probably at
It is
this
missing.
point.
It definitely is missing. But I do see a lot of the old heads of Web3 marketing. I feel like they're fizzling out. Back then, Web3 marketing was anyone with a social media presence. No real data, no real analytics, no real SEO, nothing to really back it. But I feel like it is changing. And I feel like a lot of Web2 marketing is now spilling over because they're kind of, as more Web2 brands walk into Web3 and as like the lines kind of merge, I think we're going to see a lot more of the best of both worlds coming together. And it's going to be a beautiful sight to see.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Let's take a beat. Obviously, you're a man in great shape. I know you've spoken very heavily about like what impact workouts have on your work in general. I know you've tweeted about it. I've personally also tweeted about like going to the gym regularly teaches you persistence, consistency, so on and so forth. Like, what are some of the things that you do at the gym that you feel like I learned X value from here, and I'm sort of porting that over into my working life, and then sharing that with all of the crypto folks that don't work out?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to you for days about this. Fitness and wellness is a passion of mine. It's been a passion of mine longer than marketing has been a passion of mine. Longer than crypto has been a passion of mine. I have been a child athlete, and I've never lost sight of that. Early on, fitness helped me develop my self-esteem and my confidence. It gave me the mental clarity. It made me work through a lot of trauma, childhood trauma that I had. It made me forego some prejudices and some hates and some negativity that I had in me. And it's really been a medication throughout my entire life. And as much as I love going to the gym, as much as I love working out, it's not always easy to go. It's sometimes, I don't want to leave the house. Sometimes I would love to turn on the TV and just sit down and watch TV and be lazy. But I told myself for a very long time that an exercise is like brushing your teeth. It's not something you can skip. No matter how much you hate it, you just got to go do it. And if you can go ahead and get yourself to the gym, the hardest part is walking through those doors, walking to your car. If you could get there, I believe that your passion, your intuition, your motivation will take over. Your drive will take over, and then you just let it unwind, and you become a beast. But the lessons that I take with me from the gym back home, back to my work, is I like to push hard, and sometimes while you're lifting and while you're doing your reps, you want to quit, you want to go home early. But I have this thing that I tell myself that if I'm supposed to do 10 reps, I'm going to hit that 11th rep. Because if I can do that one more every single time, that one more, that one little push, then I can go ahead and tell myself that you have the ability to always push one more ahead, that there is no stop to you. And this is not just words. I really take that home with me. I take that to work with me. And I have that one more call, that one more DM, that one more email, that one more hour, that one more book that I want to read. And it's just become part of my day to day. So I recommend the gym to everybody. It doesn't necessarily have to be with weights. It could be whatever you're passionate about. It could be walking outside in the woods. It could be yoga. It could be meditation. But definitely have that physical endurance and test your body to the limits.
No, yeah, even I think we can go on and on about this, but I do want to ask you about meditation specifically. I feel like that's personally something I struggle with. I know a lot of other people, because just the craziness that we live in within crypto, I feel like sometimes we get numb to the fact almost that we live in an industry that's working 24/7, 365. It does not take a beat. And interestingly enough, all of us working within it also are not able to sometimes like unwind, decongest our mind, so on and so forth. Like one thing I do want to ask you, do you meditate? How do you take out time for it? What's your process for that? Do you have any recommendations that somebody like me probably could take from it?
Yeah, this is definitely an area where I've struggled. Being in Web3, especially in marketing, there is no turning it off. It's constant, 24 hours. There have been times where I'm waking up every hour in the middle of the night and checking my Discord and Telegram and Twitter. It's definitely a disease. It's a luxury to be in the space, but this part is a disease. Just today, I saw a post about someone meditating for 10 hours, and they're in Web3 marketing as well. And that to me is such a luxury. Kudos to them for being able to turn it off for 10 hours and meditating. And that is something I definitely strive for. I try to meditate. I really do try. I'm not as successful as I want to be. Even during my workouts, I'll sit down for like 10 minutes and just turn everything off and just try to listen and sink in. But even then, my mind's still running. Even when I go to sleep, my mind's still running. So what's really worked for me is just doing puzzles. I know it's not completely meditating, but it does turn that part of work off. I recently just got into chess. I play a lot of chess now, and when I'm playing chess, I'm not thinking about Web3 marketing. I'm not thinking about crypto. I also got this book from a friend, Mindful Sudoku, where you do a Sudoku puzzle and then it asks you some questions that you become more mindful of your day to day. So I try to be. It's not something I'm an expert in or I'm even good at all. But what I can say is find what works for you, find what turns that part of your world off. It could be, I also have a garden that I spend time in, which I love. Find what works for you, man. I think it's different for everyone. I tried sitting down, I tried taking meditation courses and sitting down and doing sound baths. None of those worked for me. It still was active, but puzzles do work for me.
I think that's really important. Like personally, I've just tried to take maybe 10 minutes before I sleep to turn off everything. Um, I'm personally very spiritual, very religious, so I probably like pray for 10 minutes, and I consider that to be my meditation. But probably, I think ideally it probably happens in the middle of the day to just decongest and focus and get more clarity on that. Do you also feel like there is a link between the level of creativity that somebody has? Because marketing is a lot of it is just creativity at the end of the day. Do you feel like the level of activity, both mental and physical, that somebody has a direct correlation to the level of creativity that somebody is able to express within the work that they do? Because personally, I feel like that's true, but I want to know what your experience with it is.
1000%. I'm a huge believer in this. I put it to test myself hundreds of times. It's one of the reasons why I moved my workouts from the evening to the morning because there is this unlock that happens with physical activity. Like I mentioned, I do morning puzzles, and oftentimes I get stuck on these puzzles, and I think, and I can't figure it out. I go to the gym, I get my workout in, I come back and I look at that puzzle again, and instantly it's an unlock. I've figured it out right away. I think and I don't know the exact science behind this, but I think there are some chemical unlocks that happen, some endorphins that really get released where I think it broadens your perspective on a lot of things when you do work out and when you do raise your heart rate and when you do sweat out things. It's helped me out not just in my puzzles, but in my content and in my strategies putting together. So I would 100% um, recommend it. Creativity is directly tied to the blood flow, and you should definitely incorporate some physical activity to it to unlock it.
Final question, Shop, is how does somebody build a routine in order to, say, active one, be able to meditate, so on and so forth? Like, I feel like routines play a huge role in being able to stay consistent with it. We obviously understand it's good for us, and we should be doing it. But how do you almost hack your brain into formulating that routine and then being able to stick to it?
Yeah, I know I may come off as this polished marketer. At least you're making me seem super polished. But growing up, especially in college, I was a very messy and not a very disciplined person. And then someone handed me, my brother actually handed me the book Atomic Habits, and I read this and. The power of these 1% changes that you put in your life. And for me, it started out, and it might sound very cliche, it started out with just making my bed in the morning. I wake up no matter what, I have to make my bed. And that triggered something in my head where you just accomplished something. You just achieved something. You have your first success of the day. And from there, you carry it over. Then you start doing other things. You start putting away your shoes. You start eating a better breakfast. And what I would recommend is just doing these little changes in your life. I always tell myself and other people and anyone else who would listen that the you of next year will thank you for the changes you make today. So always have that foresight in the future. Make the little changes. Don't try to take big steps because you'll burn out. And that's how you really put together a routine, a disciplined routine.
Sounds amazing. Shab, before we wrap it up, I have a quick fire, rapid fire round
Let's do it.
to do with you. So, whatever comes to your mind, first thing, just shoot it out. Okay. First one piece of advice to change your life.
Push through.
Awesome. Lovely. Cheat days on Sundays or cheat week once a quarter?
Cheat days whenever you feel like you deserve one.
Awesome. Lovely. Love that. Okay. Chest day or leg day?
I find leg day much tougher, so I do leg day. I like fighting my battles.
Lovely. Okay. Sauna or cold plunge?
Sauna.
Sauna. Lovely. Diet Coke or detox water?
Neither. I don't even know what detox water is.
That's just water with a bunch of stuff in it. I don't know. I despise that.
Just juice.
Yeah, I think juice is a good one.
Yeah.
Natural,
Yeah.
not your sugar ingested juice. But okay. And final one. Would you do a Netflix binge on a Sunday to relax or listen to a Joe Rogan episode or several episodes on repeat?
Joe Rogan episode, maybe with someone like Graham Hancock, where it's talking about ancient civilizations. Put that
Good
in my
Lord.
veins any single
That
day.
can that could be a whole different podcast that I could do with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what got me into Joe Rogan in the beginning when he brought on like scientists and astrophysicists, and that's what I really compelled me to start listening to him. So yeah, that any day of the week, I love that stuff.
Sounds awesome. I think that's a perfect wrap up. Shahab, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. It's
Sharing
a pleasure.
both marketing and life advice. I think it's a complete podcast. So
I
thank you
appreciate you.
for
Thanks for
doing
having me.
this.
It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Hope to see you in the next episode. GM and bye bye.
Ciao.